everyone. I hope you're doing well, and I'm very excited to see you all, as well as I'm very excited to talk about remix and internationalization. Well, not to waste any more time, here's little things about me. My name is Arisa, and I'm a DevRel engineer at Storyblock, as well as an ambassador at Girl Code and GDE, Google Developer Expert in Web Technologies. Well, there are three takeaways from my talk. First of all, we are going to take a look at the impact of the internationalization, as well as the fundamental logic. And lastly, we are going to see how remix and internationalization works together. There are a few notes that I want you to keep in your mind before you watch my talk. First of all, there are still active discussions going on about remix and internationalization. Means that you could be one of the person to contribute to improve the DX. So yeah, feel free to take a look at the discussions or even join the discussions. I'm going to share with you the slides later on after my talk on Twitter, so you will get access to all the links that I pasted in these slides. All right, so let's get to the point. We are here to talk about the internationalization and how it works with Remix. So while I was preparing my talk, I wanted to include as many as opinions from the developers out there, not just from my side. So I started to ask this question on Twitter. So do you like to implement internationalization logic? And this is the result I got. So first of all, I got the result from 36 developers, and they say like about 41.97% of the developers, they say like, it's not my favorite. It's kind of annoying process to do that. And based on this fact, I also wanted to know, okay, I want to know more about the details, but probably from what I see, this quick poll question on Twitter, maybe for us developers, it is not a prioritized hot topic compared to performance and accessibility. But of course, I want to know more. Why? So I asked, if the internationalization is not your favorite part, why is it like this? So here's my friend Maya responded me. Thanks, Maya. First of all, she says like, well, it's not like she implements internationalization feature like on to day-to-day basis. Means that when she needs to do that, then she needs to take a look at again how it works. From the internationalization libraries or the frameworks she uses every time. Also, there is a little bit of issue between localized text and the internationalization keys, like during the test. So we know that, okay, probably like internationalization is not the hottest topic, and that's not something like fun part for developers. And based on what we think, of course, we also need to take a look at or see like how is it like in the world and how is it like for the user's perspective as well. So here's the little numbers and the facts. I'd like to start from something bigger numbers. So first of all, I want you to think about this number. What do you think this 5.07 billion number stands for? It is actually the numbers of the users in the world who use the internet. So breaking down, like these big billions of numbers into smaller percentages, starting from 25.9%. What do you think about this percentage? This is actually the percentage of the English content on the internet. 25.9 is less than 50%, which means that if you're good at math, then you could probably calculate this number, 74.1%. Yes, that's the rest of the percentage of the users who access non-English content on the internet. Which leads us to this keyword, China. So China actually has the most internet users worldwide. No surprise from based on this fact. We also could think about this keyword, Asia. So yes, Asia leads more than half of global internet users. That's massive, right? So yes, now we know. Probably localizing content is not the hottest topic for us developers. However, we cannot ignore, no matter what, from this more than half of the users in the world. It's two massive numbers to ignore. So based on what we know and what we feel, let's talk about the fundamental logic of the internationalization. So first of all, internationalization works in three ways to determine the languages and the regions. The first approach, the most top, and here says location from the IP address, means that based on the IP address, for example, where I am based on right now in Germany, the content that I take a look at on the internet will detect I'm based in Germany, so the content will be displayed in German sometimes if they take this approach. If they use the second approach, means using accept language header from the HTTP request or the navigator languages, means that they will take a look at my language preference. So in the browser, I prefer to use the English, so that's what I configure my setting, and that's what the information is going to be used to return the localized content for me. So sometimes even when I'm based in Germany, I see the content in English as I preferred. And the third option is using the identifier in URL. Basically, it's actually like translating or localizing the URL for the users. So it means like the easiest example would be like I will have the English, German, and Japanese, let's say like language like selector buttons on the browser, then I can click to select to take a look at the languages. In this talk, we are going to use two ways to go hybrid because I want our users to be more flexible and to have more control by themselves. So I would leave the option for them to change the languages of their choice on the browser from the UI, as well as first of all, like let's be nicer, detecting their preferred language setting on the browser. So we saw together like how it works or what's the fundamental logic in the internationalization. And as for the identifier URL, there are three patterns to take a look at it. So let's break it down. So pattern one. So this is a way to differentiate, the localized content by domains. Basically, you're going to create totally different kind of websites in this case, but the domains are different, so it won't follow the same origin policy. Means that your websites could be considered as kind of copy. So from the security perspective, it's kind of suspicious. Let's move on to the pattern 2. So pattern 2 uses the URL parameters. Maybe for developers it makes sense, but it's not user-friendly for the users. And also for everyone, this URL doesn't look clean, right? So we don't want to take this way. Moving on to the pattern 3, which is localized in subdirectories. In this case, we are going to add the localized, slug after, like something.com / in there. So in this way, it's quite clear for the users for which languages they're taking a look at it. And it's also easier for us to identify which language we deliver to the users. All right, so let's now talk about the frameworks and the libraries. Why suddenly from out of nowhere? Well, it's actually a quite relevant topic because some of the frameworks and the libraries, they use the internationalization of frameworks. So let's take a look at how it works in Remix. So in Remix case, there are in general two approaches to choose. So the first option would be using the package called Remix, Remix I18 Next. And the second approach would be like using content management system. So first of all, let's take a look at what is Remix I18 Next. So I told you before that it is an NPM package, right? And this is more precisely made for the Remix to use this internationalization framework called I18 Next. And that is built by Sergio. So thank you, Sergio, for building such an amazing NPM package because now, because of that, we have more options to choose. All right, so let's take a look at the example from this case. And first of all, we are going to create a couple of configuration files. But to get started, we are going to create the translated files. In this case, I'm going to create one default language and one another language. So I set English as a default language. So I created on the right-hand side and then top the file called common.json file. I'm going to show you why I already know I can give a name to, be common.json file in this case. But let's focus on for now how we can set the property name and the key values, which is actually like localized string values. So first of all, I have decided to, let's say, call this property name as greeting. So this value I'm going to use when I'm going to translate from the source code, level. So on the right-hand side is the key value, which is the localized string value. I want to say hello in English. And to translate into Japanese, in this case, I have created another translated file for storing this Japanese translated file in under the directory of JA. So the value will be hello in Japanese. So after creating these translated files, we are going to create I18next configuration file. So as I said before, for some reason, I already knew that I was able to give the name of the translated files to be common.js, right? So here's the reason why. If you pay attention to this default NS, by the way, NS stands for the namespaces, and I gave a name as common. So that's why I already knew that I could give a name as common.js. So there are a couple of other configurations, but nothing too complicated because first of all, I just want to list up the supported languages, English, Japanese, and of course, I want to have a fallback language to be the default language. Based on what we created, the translated files, and also the I18next translation, the configuration file, now is the time to import this I18next configuration file into the i18next.server.js file. So after importing it, of course, I want to call a couple of the values. First of all, the supported language list and also the fallback language list. And based on that, remember these, configuration file we created. These, languages list are the arrays inside of the arrays, and the values inside are strings. So I can iterate these values from the configuration file that I have created. And in here, what I'm doing is that I am setting the translation file paths. All right, now moving on to create the client side and the server side configuration files. I'm only going to show you the details of the client side configuration files because you can take a look at more details about the server side configuration files. And a couple of lines of the codes are quite similar, so I don't want to, repeat the similar content. So here's the entry.client.jsx file, which is the client-side configuration file. There are a couple of lines of the code, but I want you to pay attention to the only highlighted lines of the code. So first of all, there is an API called I18next provider coming from React I18next. Keep in your mind that in this way, we are going to install and use a couple of other I18next related packages. So make sure that this is actually coming from React I18next. So after I told you that I want you to pay attention to this API, here is the place where you can actually call inside of the JSX scope. So we are going to wrap this Remix browser component that is coming from Remix side. And we are going to see the logic why we need to wrap this component precisely with this I18next provider API. But to give you a little bit more context, what we are wrapping is that this Remix browser component is or should be used by React to hydrate the HTML. So there's another clue that why I am insisting and highlighting, these lines of the code. Actually, it is very important to see the timing of when it's going to be hydrated and when the translation files are going to be loaded. So here are the answers to take a look at together. First of all, let's see together why translation files should be loaded before the hydration. Well, let's probably start to imagine from if translation files are not loaded before hydration happens. Imagine that hydration, let's say sorry, not imagine, but then when hydration happens, users already would be able to see the UI with all the styles, right? But the application itself is not yet interactive. So in this case, translation files are not yet loaded and hydration already happened. So if I want to change the language from English to Japanese to say hello, I cannot see that because first of all, these, translation values are not yet ready. Based on that, if we imagine if the translation files are already loaded before the hydration happens, now we know this case would work because the app is already kind of interactive in a way. So when the hydration happens, the UI is ready with the styles and the translation files are already loaded. So if I want to switch from English to Japanese to say hello, now I can see that because the translation files are already loaded. Moving on to a little bit more in-depth, question based on what we saw the configuration file from the client side. So why wrapping, this Remix API called Remix browser with the API called i18 Next provider that is coming from React i18 Next. So I took a look at a little bit more details from the Node modules file, and here's what I was able to reach out. So i18N provider, it actually includes this use memo React hook. So this React hook is letting you to cache the result of the calculation between re-renders. If I say in a little bit easier way, basically like if the values of this internationalization configuration and the default namespaces, mainly the translated files, are the same, then we are not going to trigger the re-rendering because that's going to cost you a lot and it's not performant. We want to avoid being not performant, right? So if the values of these, let's say calculations are the same, then we are going to cache that and do not trigger the re-rendering. But if the values are being updated, then we are going to trigger the re-rendering. So in this perspective, you can see that internationalization is kind of the key to improve the performance, or you need to consider about the performance as well. But by using all these packages, it's already considered about it, so you do not have to implement such kind of features from scratch on your end. So just a little info about like completely, instead of completely skipping about how to configure like the server-side configuration file. First of all, I want to mention you that identifying users, let's say preferred languages of their choice, and redirecting them can be done on the server side. And if you want to take a look at it, here's the link and the README that you can take a look at it. All right. Let's move on to use the configurations that we have set up so far in action. So in here, we are going to take a look at this file called root.jsx under the directory of the app. This is the very fundamental and important, I would say, like file in the Remix app. So in here, I want you to pay attention to 3 APIs that are coming from Remix side. So starting from use loader data. So this use loader data will get the locale from the loader function and up above. So this loader function is not just a random function that we just defined. Instead, it is actually a backend API that is coming from Remix, and it's already wired up through the use loader data. Means that these APIs are linked to each other already. So what we need to do in the end is that we want to, first of all, get the locale, right? Means we need to return the locale. So to do that, we can, request for the response to, give us the locale. But instead of, defining by writing, a few lines of the code in here to say like new response headers, etc., you can call another API called JSON that is coming from Remix to complete such kind of, let's say, process in one-liner-ish code. All right, so let's take a look at on the browser how it works. So let's see. If I switch back and forth between Spanish and English, now you can see the header navigation items are being translated, and also the hello greeting message has been translated as well, and also the buttons below over there as well. So to translate, let's say this hello part, here's the little example. In any route of your Remix app, you can import this use translation coming from React i18 Next. And based on what we configure and created all the fundamentals, all we need to do is just wrapping, the property that is coming from the translated files. Remember that we created 2 translated files, right? And in the property, I set the value as greeting. So that's what I am wrapping up. So here is the result that you can see. And before I'm going to actually like go to the next slide, I have a little confession to you. So you need to, or I want you to pay attention to this here at the URL path. You see a sneaky little like slash, which includes the URL parameters, right? So here are the 3 confessions from my side. Let me be honest, I use the URL parameters, yes, and that's not something that I wanted to do. And in fact, in the beginning of this talk, I told you that we want to avoid using it. And secondly, do we developers need to maintain the translation files? If we think about, let's say, the process or the configurations that we have created, we now remember that there are 2 translation files, right, in English and Japanese. We do not want to maintain these translation files in the source code level, right? Also, the third confession, did we translate the slugs? No, I don't think so. I haven't yet translated the slugs. Instead, I use the URL parameters. And here's another friend of mine on Twitter, Bart. Thanks again for giving me the comments. He also considered about the same. So if he wants to split up the translation files per route, it is possible, but it's a little bit cumbersome. And of course, it's not an ideal to take to take care of all of these translated files on the source code level. We don't want to do that. Also, he wants to know about how to localize the URLs. So let me be clear what we want to achieve for the rest of my talk. So we want to achieve actually localized URL, right? And also we do not want to have like translation files in our code. So here's another example, based on what we saw, like Remix in general can have 2 approaches to implement the internationalization. First of all, we took a look at together to use this npm package called remix i18 next. And secondly, we're going to take a look at the content management system example. So you can choose whatever kind of content management system or headless CMSs out there. In this talk, I picked up Storyblok because this is the most, I would say, like comfortable and the familiar CMS for me. I use the most, and also it gives the most numbers of, let's say, structures to configure how you want to localize the content on the CMS side. But I'm not going to talk about like how you can implement between Storyblok and Remix. This can be explained in this tutorial, let's say blog post, so you can easily take a look at it after my talk. All right, depending on the headless CMSs or the CMSs of your choice, they would give you average like 1 to 4 ways to structure to store localized content. And as part of it, it also will give you some possibilities, or not just you, for your translators and content editors to structure how they want to nest these dynamic routes. I wish I could have more time to explain and show you like all these 4 approaches, but for time conscious, I'm going to show you this folder level translation. So this approach is quite straightforward because, as you can see, all localized content are being, stored in the dedicated folders. So there's no way that the translators will mix up localized pages and the content. So first of all, before going to take a look at more in depth in how it works with the source code level, I'm going to show you how it works on the browser. So here I'm at the default, let's say blog overview page, which is in English. And of course, if I'm going to take a look at the traveling to Salt Lake City, all these, like English blog post relevant pages are being stored at the folder. And the local, let's say URL shouldn't include any slugs because this is the default language, right? But if I go to this exactly the same page, traveling to Salt Lake City in Japanese, it should include JA, which stands for the Japanese slug. And also the contents are being translated. On the right-hand side, you can see your translators can work on to store like the translated values of the content. And if I go back to the previous page, which is the blog overview page, it also includes JA in the URL. And if I go back to the default home page, which is in the most root, it shouldn't include any, let's say even EN of the language slug. And of course, the contents are being back to the English. So in this way, you can see that you do not have to deal with translated files anymore in your source code. Instead, the translators who should be actually the one being responsible to start to translate the content and managing the content, where it should be stored, can have all the, let's say, flexibility. And here's the little logic, how you can actually create such kind of dynamic route logic in there. So in Remix, there are a couple of ways to, let's say, like render these kind of dynamic routes, but I picked up this flat route because by using it, you will allow whoever, like wants to create the pages and even create nested dynamic routes from the content management system, they can do that without, like editing any source code. So once you implement this feature by using these flat routes, then, dynamic routes, even including the nested structure, can be done from the CMS side. So here's the little kind of example. You already know this use loader data and JSON, right? So I'm going to more paying attention to these green highlighted line of the code. So Remix already provides you a very useful parameter called params. And if you, let's say, like log out, if you log this params with the square brackets and string value of the asterisk, like you can see on the source code, when you go back and forth different pages, it will show you, like the full path, full dynamic path of the pages that you are taking a look at it. So we are using this logic to render all these, dynamic routes, including the nested routes. So here's a little summary of what we saw together in my talk. We know that more than half of the users in this world access localized content. So we cannot simply ignore, like more than half of the users in this world, right? And also we took a look at together like multiple ways of making internationalization. So I hope it was helpful for you to choose the best way for your cases, as well as we know that implementing internationalization does matter a lot to think about better performance, also the UI and UX. So consider performance and UI UX as well with internationalization. There's a little kind of request from my side to you in the end. So please send me the feedback, like on Twitter. I really would love to improve my talks in general. Any feedback would improve me. So you can mention my name, mention the username on Twitter and tweet about the feedback. All right, that would be all from my side. Thank you so much for watching my talk, and I hope, you enjoyed it.